Hello, Garland Nixon, and I am back, I think, and we're going to talk about the Western ruling elite. And there's an old term, like a monkey with a straight razor, implying an entity that has something dangerous that doesn't have the intellectual capacity to wield whatever that thing they have is that is dangerous. In this instance, it's power. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here. And everybody, let me know. I had some sound issues earlier. I think, I use these Blue Tech mics, and they're great mics. These Yeti Blue Techs, fantastic. The sound is incredible. But it seems like about a year in, they always crap out on me. I don't know what that is. So everybody let me know if the sound is good. We can talk about the despicable ruling elite in the West. Now, let me get started here. Sound good, everybody? Sound good? Sound good? I guess it must be. I'm getting no complaints. So one of the things that you have to talk about when you talk about the ruling elite in the West is you have to talk about culture. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is what I would consider a cultural collapse. Now I know what you're saying if you're a Westerner. Hey, my culture ain't collapsing. Let me make this point. Within cultures, within a culture, when you talk about a culture, right? We got a culture. We got food that we eat, we got art, we got music, whatever. Okay, this is a particular culture, right? If you're in say France, you're in baguettes and berets, whatever the hell. Germany, schnitzel. All the way down, it's schnitzel, right? Whatever the case may be, right? But within a culture, there can be a subculture, right? There's a culture here and there's a subculture. For instance, the mafia. Maybe the Italian culture is their culture, but there's a subculture that's somewhat different, right? Somewhat, shall we say, violent and criminal, right? Okay. So my point, why am I getting to all the fact of a subculture, right? It looks the foundations of the culture are the same, but there are differences. There are idiosyncrasies. Let's go with that. There are idiosyncrasies that are peculiar to this particular subculture that separates it from the rest of the culture, right? And so, yes, everybody's loud. Yeah, that mic was on its way out. I'm gonna have to take it back from them friggin' Yeti mics, man. They're great for about a year. Anyway, so let me continue. So when I talk about the ruling elite in the West, I'm talking about a subculture that, like for centuries, has been a problem, has been a real problem. You go back to the French Revolution. What do you hear if you think about the echo of today? That is the French Revolution. What we're seeing today is the echo of the French Revolution. It's the echo of an elite ruling class that has no connection to the working class. An elite ruling class that has no connections to the people. And not only does it have no connections to the working class, it literally has nothing but contempt for the working class. If you look at it right now, think about the censorship right now, right? It is contempt for the working class. How dare you should have your own opinion. Now there's a lie to the things that the ruling elite, they can't just come out and say, we feel we should boss you around. We should tell you what to do. We should tell you what to think. We should limit what you can and can't say. No. So they have to guide. They have to address that up as they're doing good. Yes, you could say something online that could be misinformation. It could mislead people. Now, there's a certain contempt for the working class and for regular people when they say it could mislead you. Why is that? It could misinform you. Why is that? Because the implication is that the ruling elite have the ability and the knowledge to know what's right and wrong. And they, in their ultimate advanced intellect, not only do they have the ability to know what you should or shouldn't hear, they have the authority to tell you, right, what you should or shouldn't hear, and they have the duty to defend you from things that you shouldn't hear, right? So this culture, the ruling elite Western culture, is a culture that says the Regular old schmucks on the street are intellectually inferior to us, and we have a right and a duty to protect them from things that they shouldn't hear that could mislead them. And by mislead them, they mean make you think something that they don't want you to think, even if it's true. They don't care if it's true. Haven't we seen that with censorship? What have we seen with censorship? They have a word, malinformation, right? They got misinformation, disinformation. What do they mean? It means whatever they want them to mean. But malinformation is an interesting one, because malinformation means it's true. It's malicious information. See, mal doesn't say it's dis or miss. It's malicious. In other words, it's 100% true, but it's malicious because it would take you in an area where we don't want you to go. And we're the ruling elite, and we got a right to say that, and you have no right to push back, right? So what we're looking at is a subculture within this culture. And I say it's a subculture because the general culture are all of us. Like, I'm not Europe, but stay me here, right? The general culture of all of us, the plebes, everybody out here is just going about their way, trying to survive and make a living, right? And the ruling elite are a small group. You know, J.D. Vance recently gave a speech where he mentioned the leadership class. And he said the leadership class got it wrong. And he goes on to talk about how, well, we thought we could just give China some work and give them some stuff to do and they'd be busy. Darn those Chinese. They went and figured out how to do things on their own. And now, oh my God, they're catching us and, dare I say, passing us. Now I'm putting words in his mouth, but that's what he was getting at. The Chinese didn't know their place. They were supposed to be workers. They were supposed to be worker bees. They were supposed to be drones. They were supposed to work in the factories, keep their mouths shut. And what the hell do you know? They took the information that they had. They educated their own scientists, and they started coming up with things that we couldn't come up with, and now we're screwed and we got to deal with that like the violent beast that we are, right? And how do we do that? Well, I got an idea. We got lots of working class people. Why don't we just start a war and throw them all to the front and let them get mowed down like cordwood, and then everything will be fine after that, right? That's kind of the implication most of the time. But at any rate, so as I continue, you get my point. The point I'm making is this: when I say cultural collapse, now there are cultural collapses going on too. As an example, when I say France with friggin' baguettes and berets, right? That's traditional France. But do something else, and we got to be honest about it. We got to, let's hit everything as it is. The other part of it is this: because the French, the Brits, the whoever the hell, the Americans go around the world blowing the hell out of France and impoverishing people and going to Niger. What do they do? They go to West Africa. What do? They steal their uranium. They steal their gold. They steal all of their natural resources. These are countries that are extremely rich. They're not poor countries. They're extremely wealthy countries. France wouldn't be there if they were poor, right? They're very, very wealthy countries. In the same way that if I got they were poor in the same way that if I walk out of the bank with a Rolex on and a $20,000 bank a gold bracelet or something, and somebody sticks a gun in my back and robs me, I'm now poor. Why am I poor? I'm still broke. Why? Because somebody robbed it from me. Well, that's how West Africa's poor. They got the most expensive, most valuable natural resources on earth. And of course, that's why France was there. And that's why they called it, French West Africa, Francophone Africa, etc. They were robbing them blind, right? As a result of robbing a lot of these countries, what happened? A lot of these people went wandering off looking for a better place to stay and ended up in France and in wherever. And from the perspective of culture, if you have a French culture that has baguettes and berets and wine and cheese and whatever the hell the French do, I don't know, but whatever they do it, right? You got them, and you start bringing in these people from Middle East and West Africa and Algeria and all over the place as a result of the ruling elite screwing around, screwing over there, causing wars, overthrowing their shit, and making all kind of refugees come back. After a while, let's be honest, the general culture of France becomes diluted. Now you got a bunch of people there that ain't really into baguettes and berets. They're maybe into hummus. I don't know whatever the hell they're from. They're eating that, right? And the general culture begins to collapse. And the people in France start saying, hey, this don't seem like France anymore. Everybody here is not from France. And then people call them a bunch of racist pigs because they kind of want to hold on to the French culture. And I say this, notwithstanding the fact that there are some racist pigs in France and everywhere else on earth. I'm just saying, from the perspective of the average French person who says, hey, I kind of like the culture with baguettes and berets, they got a right to kind of want to hold on to that. But they're their anger, unfortunately, by the ruling elite, I mean, it's directed by the ruling elite. So rather than the ruling elite saying, perhaps we should overthrow all of these countries, screw these people's lives up, and when we took over this country, they became subjects of the crown, and they could automatically come here. And now, what do you know? All these countries that we went and robbed, their people are all over here, and it's hard to find a baguette and a beret like you used to, right? And the people are restive. But rather than say, yeah, we kind of did that, so because we're greedy and we wanted to fill our filthy pockets, the ruling elite say, hey, how about all these darn immigrants? Well, we got to stop them. They're screwing things up, running around with their burqas on and this and that. How'd they get here, ruling elite? Whose fault is that? But we can't have that discussion. It's got to be about, you got to be pissed off at the immigrants because they came here. No discussion. But again, it gets back to the ruling elite, right? It gets back to the reality that we now have to start examining really closely the ruling elite in Europe, the ruling elite in America, and decide what direction we need to go, because what they're doing ain't working. If we evaluate them, let me give you an example. One of the things I said about the US under the Biden administration, right? The Biden administration, what did they do? Let's be honest about what's happening. And there's a foundation here too, that you have to start with the foundation for all of this. All of this. Ukraine ultimately is all about the foundational narrative. The reality was the United States empire has been saying since the fall, for many decades, but when the Soviet Union was there, and now that Russia's there, that Ukraine was a very valuable tool to be used to destabilize the Soviet Union, and now then to destabilize Russia. So the Ukraine project was always an imperial project. It was always the project of the United States to weaponize the country of Ukraine so that it could be used to destabilize Russia, or prior to that, the Soviet Union, because they wanted to steal all of their stuff. They wanted to control Eurasia, this humongous landmass that's loaded with natural resources. And they wanted to get that. And they never had much luck, because every time they tried a frontal assault, whether it was Napoleon, Hitler, the Crimean War, you name it, whatever it was, Sweden, every time they tried a frontal assault, the Russians would repel the frontal assault. So now they're like, well, let's weaponize Ukraine. We can't really take Russia down, but we'll weaponize Ukraine. We'll use Ukraine to destabilize Russia. Once it's destabilized, we can then do the regime change thing, get a compliant government, and that way we can still access their stuff, like they do a lot in a lot of what used to be called third world. Now they call them developing nations. That's the foundation of all of these discussions and understanding the ruling elite. And part of it was due to, the deterioration of neoliberal capitalism. Now they're starting to face a more desperate economic situation. Bottom line is, this neoliberal system does one thing really, really well: extract money from the working class worldwide, not just you, the people in other countries, and take that money out of the hands of the working people and the poor and put it in the hands of the rich. Does it really, really well. Oh, unfortunately, that ain't a real good economic model, and eventually it collapses. And so now they're facing an economic collapse like none before. Right? That's just absolutely devastating. They can't, everything's, when the economy would no longer provide the jobs for people that and the economic security for people anymore, they went to credit. And so now everybody's got credit and people can borrow everything they want. And so now that people can borrow everything they want, hey, that's great. We can lend people stuff. Well, now the corporations, the governments, the people, everybody has borrowed. That was a result of having an economic system that didn't work. You print money, you borrow money, because within the context of this system, they use words like innovation. This system doesn't work. It doesn't produce innovation. It doesn't produce anything. It produces magical financial tools like asset-backed securities and derivatives, credit default swaps, these kind of things. That's how you make money. You buy back your own stock. The government gives you X amount of millions of dollars to bail you out from the latest financial problem, and you use that to buy back your own stock and automatically inflate the value of your stock and make more money. And then you take the money that the government just gave you and you buy government treasury bills, because you're not paying any interest in government treasury bills. What if it pays you 3-4? You got it for free money. So all you keep doing is you got a system that doesn't work and the government bails it out. Okay. So that's where we are. That's where we are all throughout the West. And that system is coming to a head because it was a Ponzi scheme. The whole thing was a Ponzi scheme. And now the Ponzi scheme is falling apart. And so now what? Now they got to go out and steal more stuff. And there sits Russia. And it's like, well, we've been trying to take this crap from Russia for I don't know how long. Let's go for it. So there's Ukraine. We got it all geared up and ready to go. Let's take Russia. Didn't work. Their plan didn't work. Now, of course, they cooked up a narrative to lie to us. No, the Russians are just evil. And they decided to just on a given day, they decided to wake up and go after the they hate the Europeans, and they decide to go after the Europeans and attack poor little old Ukraine, blah, 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 blah. The bottom line is all that stuff falls apart. And so what happens now? The ruling elite are exposed. They're naked right now. Their economics aren't working. What is economically, what's working in Europe? What happened? The United States said, well, things ain't working out well for us. Economically, our neoliberal financialized system is doing the same thing as Europe. So here's what we'll do. We'll eat Europe for lunch while we start starving. Think about this. If you stop eating, what does your body do? Why do you lose weight? Because your body will feed on itself. Your body will start taking the calories out of your muscles and stuff like that, start feeding on that, and then you'll get skinnier and skinnier and skinnier. It cannibalizes itself, right? What is the U.S. empire doing? It's cannibalizing itself. Okay, we can't survive. Let's start taking some of the nutrients out of Europe. Well, they did something called the Inflation Reduction Act. What was that? That was deliberate legislation to induce companies to shut down in Europe and move to the United States. Taking deindustrialization of Europe. That's what it was, a deliberate deindustrialization of Europe. And it's still going on right now. And right now, what is Trump saying? I will do some tariffs on Europe. Why? A big part of the tariffs, if you listen to Dr. Jack Rasmus, he'll talk about it. Raising money. How is it going to raise money? The economy ain't doing what it needs to do to bring in tax money. The only thing they can do is print it. But we're not. What do we make to sell around the world? Right? War material. So one of the big reasons that tariffs are there, as Dr. Jack says, is it's another way to raise money. And who are we going to hit with tariffs? Europe. Why? Screw Europe. They're our possession. It's time to eat Europe. And that's what the U.S. is doing. And the Europeans are like, okay, how are we going to deal with this? So you got the ruling elite in Europe, and they're in a bind. Number one, they're up to their ears in debt. That's all they got is debt. So they're up to their ears in debt. They're I thought I heard a TV in the background or a door or something. Anyway, so they're up to their ears in debt, and there's no way they're being deindustrialized. There's no way for them to get back on their feet economically. Okay, that's one thing. They need something. They need Russia. They need to steal those natural resources. They need to get back to that cheap energy, but they can't deal with Russia and just buy it from them. They got to steal it. They can't buy it at market price. They need all those natural resources. And so now they've set up a narrative to take Russia, and there's no way out for them. The ruling elite have created, you might have heard this before, neurotics build castles in the sky, psychotics live in them, right? They've done both. They built this castle in the sky, this narrative where Russia was evil and Russia was just trying to take you plucky little Ukraine because they're evil and they're imperial and blah, blah, blah. And now they got to live in that. And there ain't no way out. So now what do you have? Think about this. When Biden was in, here's what I said. Biden's plan was in and of itself suicidal. The policy of the United States was suicidal. The policy of the United States was quite simple. We will inflict a strategic defeat on Russia. At the same time, Russia's nuclear deterrent policy was this: if the Russian state suffers a strategic defeat, we will nuke the living hell out of whoever our enemy is and turn them to dust, which in this case would be the United States and Europe. So Biden's policy was, if he was successful and he was able to exact a strategic defeat on Russia, then of course, if he was able to get what he wanted, then everybody died. I mean, if you think about it, the absurdity of that, right? Now, the first question is this: don't they know about nuclear weapons? Well, of course they do. But to them, you know, there are people that will do things, and you're like, why the person would do that? Why would they risk their life? Some things to people are tantamount to death. And if they didn't get the Russia's resources and continue to dominate the world, to them, not dominating the world is tantamount to death. So are they risking death? Look, it's like the old Star Trek line, right? When they were when it was like the Klingons, whoever had them surrounded, something bad was going to happen. Some space people were going to kill them, and as usual, Scott, the captain, would come up with some harebrained scheme, and Spock would say, "But Captain, according to my calculations, your plan only has a 11.349% chance of succeeding." And he would say to Spock, "We got a better plan?" And Spock would go, "Mr. Sulu, full speed ahead," right? In other words, hey, let's do it. That was his answer. No, I don't. And sometimes if it's like, well, the odds are we're going to die. Well, you know, what other options do we have? Well, if we don't do this, we're surely going to die. This only has a 10% chance of working. You got to do it, right? You're surrounded by people that are about to kill you, and you're standing on the side of the water, and you jump, and you're like, well, if I jump in that water, maybe there's sharks or whatever, I got a 20% chance of surviving it, and then maybe a 10% chance of making it 20. You know, so maybe I got a 30% chance of survival if I jump off here down into the water. If I stay here, they're going to kill me before. You got to take a shot. You got to jump and swim to shore. Hey, 30% is better than zero, right? So for the ruling elite, they're looking at it like this: look, if we try to take out Russia, we may be nuked. There's, you know, a percentage of possible chance we'll be nuked. But if we don't, and everything falls apart, there's going to be a revolution, and these people are going to cut our freaking heads off. So to them, they might as well take a shot not getting nuked or getting nuked, because other than that, their economy, the domination of the world is gone for sure, right? So the bottom line is, so that's where they are. So now what do we have? You know, let me add this about Europe before I get to the next phase of this, shall we say. You know, I used to think to myself, how in the hell did you have World War I and World War II? You know what I mean? Rationally speaking, World War II, you know, oh, we're going to bomb each other. We're going to kill. We're going to try to march millions of soldiers around here. We're going to blow things up, fly planes over. And I just saw the madness. And I always said like this, right? I thought like this, you know, one of the things that I try to do is think like I am an alien who was dropped on this planet. And I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm just trying to figure out, what are these creatures? And I said, ultimately, they're just a bunch of warring tribes. I'm not impressed by humans at all. Just a bunch of warring tribes. Pretty pathetic creatures. Not very bright, easily misled, wandering around aimlessly. For God's sake, somebody get me out of this freaking planet, right? That's what I'm thinking. Get me out of here. These people are lunatics, right? If you think about it, I'd make warring tribes. That's it. Hey, the Chinese are bad. No, the Russians are bad. It's the Venezuelans that are bad. Yeah, you're all wrong. It's the, you know, and it just goes into, this group is bad and my group is good. It is pathetic if you really think about it. Humans, we ain't got a lot to brag about. That's all I'm trying to say. We ain't got a whole lot to brag about. I'm not real proud to be a human, if you want to be honest. Or maybe I've been better off being a rock. You know what I mean? At least I'd have an excuse. I could just sit in one place all the time until eventually I dissolved into sand. I think that would be far better than the fate that I've been damned to of being a lowly human. Dare I should continue. Anyway, so ultimately, this is what we got now. They've tried this. It didn't work. The U.S. empire had some other plans. Okay, we're not in Europe. We'll try to do something, other diabolical plot to dominate the world. I know. We'll go after China. Oh, that's just brilliant, right? And we got to keep the Middle East because, hey, that's where all the oil is, right? Oh, yeah, that's working out real well. Killing lots of people, doing terrible things. So the U.S. is exposing itself as a violent, genocidal, murderous, crazy place, right? But think about the Europeans right now. When you look at it, like these Starmers and Macrons and Olaf Scholzes of the world, right? They are literally saying we're ready to fight Russia. But rationally speaking, in fact, an article came out today where the UK military, I guess they finally had enough of this bastard and they put their foot down. So some high-ranking people in the UK military have said, let me see if I can find it. In a nutshell, what the hell's wrong with Starmer? Let me find this. China, Israel, something needs. I wish I could find it. I don't see it. I had that article somewhere. There we go. UK military slams Ukraine peace. Here we go. UK military officials have dismissed Prime Minister Keir Starmer's proposal for deploying Western troops to Ukraine as part of a peacekeeping force to oversee a potential ceasefire. The Telegraph reported on Sunday. Senior military sources told the outlet that Starmer had, quote, got ahead of himself. London hosted planned talk, blah, blah, blah. There is no defined military end state or military strategic planning assumptions. It's all political theater. One senior army official told the news outlet, Starmer got ahead of himself with talking of boots on the ground before he knew what he was talking about, right? It's politics. There is no military sense in it, another defense source said, knowing that neither Russia nor the U.S. support the coalition. He also pointed to the lack of clarity on mission goals. What is the 10,000-man international force based in the west of the country over 400 kilometers from the front line meant to do? It cannot even protect itself, he argued. What is the mission? What is its legitimacy? What are the rules of engagement? How is it commanded, supplied, and housed? How long is it there for and why? No one knows. So the bottom line is this. Those are legitimate questions that Starmer couldn't ask, that Macron couldn't ask, that they didn't even, there was no reason for them to ask them because they are like a monkey with a razor blade or an ape with a grenade. You'd heard all of that. They are like an entity, a person that you give a something dangerous to, and they don't even know it's dangerous. They have no idea how to wield it. They don't know anything. They're just wandering around. You give them a grenade. Oh, I think this is a pineapple. And they walk around, boom, it blows up. Here's a gift. They hand you the grenade. You're like, holy crap, it's a grenade. You take off running, right? Because this monkey doesn't know. This ape doesn't know he's got a grenade. The monkey, hey, it's a straight razor blade. That's fun. He just swings it all over the place. He's cutting the hell out of everybody, including himself. You see, the other part of it is the monkey with a razor blade or ape with grenade, or ape with a grenade, or was it monkey with a straight razor or ape with grenade, implies that the person or monkey or ape in this instance is as big a danger to themselves as they are to everyone else. So now, ultimately, we have a ruling elite that think about this. They don't have the sense of the people on the street. You could find a drug addict in a heroin addict in London, right? In West London, some heroin addict wandering the streets, wherever, and say to him, hey, what do you think? You think we ought to go over there and fight the Russians? The heroin addict's going to stumble up to you, and he's going to say, that's probably not a good idea, dude. Man, I don't think that's a good idea. Meanwhile, the person who's supposed to be ruling elite members of the country, sure, let's go for it. They are not rational. And see what's happening, this Ukraine conflict and as I said, difficult times exposes people. Difficult times doesn't change them, right? It is exposing a level of desperation. Oh my God, what are we going to do if it doesn't work? And here's the thing about it. It ain't working. They can't even admit to themselves that it's not working, that it's not going to work. What the hell do we do now? That's, in other words, that's where they are. The ruling elite in Europe is in the what the hell do we do now stage. Let's count on the U.S. U.S., what are you going to do? MI6 and CIA will put a puppet government in. Great, got that done. Then what? We're going to load all kind of weapons into Russia. Fantastic. Into Ukraine. Fantastic. The diabolical plot is working out perfectly. What next? Okay, then we'll make sure these neo-Nazis are stupid enough to go charging into the Russian lines. Excellent. That's going to work. Looks good. Anything else? Sure. And then this is where to go. And then this is how it's going to work out. They're always wrong. There'll be we'll do all of our economic sanctions, and the ruble will turn to rubble. The Russians will get mad. They'll grab Putin. They'll give him the Gaddafi treatment, and then we'll go in and steal everything. That was their plan, except it didn't work because that's not how things work. Because they're always wrong and they're idiots. And so they're like, okay, and now it didn't work. Really, if you think about it, where are the European ruling elites right now? Where are they? They're in a bad place. They're in a place where their plan didn't work. That's a real bad place to be. You came up with a desperate plan and it didn't work. And you're still holding on to it. You don't have a new plan. You don't have a new idea. You don't know where to go. You have no clue what to do next. You haven't even gotten to the point where you can admit that your plan didn't work. They couldn't be in a worse place. They came up with a diabolical plot. They executed the plot exactly as they came up with it, and they didn't get the outcome they projected. What the hell now? Well, at least things couldn't get worse. Trump won. And Biden's gone. And Biden was one of you. Biden and his team was one of you. The ruling elite in Europe, using their ultimate wisdom to control everybody, they turned their culture into this hypersexualized thing, right? Where, okay, we're going to make sure that the number one thing is we feminize the men and we masculinize the woman. So all of our movies, all of our everything, the woman's the big superhero and the woman's in charge of everything. And the man is gay and he's running around in a dress because he's now a woman, right? So they came up with this culture to kind of, change, and they're going to push back against traditional culture where there's men and women and husbands and wives and things like that. That's more traditional culture. And most of the people are like, look, there's been gay people all around. We got nothing against gay people. Yeah, but gay people are the most important thing in society, and trans people and all that kind of stuff. So they pushed that all over the place, and the Biden people were all over that. Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do that. Why? Because they could use that. It was a valuable tool. Because now they had one more tool for regime change, one more method to attack people. They could now go to countries, and just think about this. This particular tool is very valuable because Russia, the Muslim countries, Latin America, Africa, right? These countries, they're more traditional, what we call traditional values, right? And so the gay thing is not as well accepted. That's very valuable for the neocons because those countries all got stuff they want to steal, and they need a reason to overthrow their countries and take their stuff and sanction them. And what can they say? Why are you sanctioning this country? Well, they're not nice to gay people. You make that one of the leading edge, gay and transsexual and stuff like that. That's the leading edge of our value. Then you go after this country and you say, we've got to overthrow this government and take their oil. Why? Because they don't go along with our values. And you already have said, I know I'm going to make this at the leading edge of my values. And I already know these other more traditional countries aren't going to like them. So since they don't do it, I can take any of them out I want. I can always have an excuse to attack any of them. They put rainbow flag. The U.S. literally at all their embassies put up rainbow flags all around the world. Why? So they can point out to these countries, you're not going along with what we want. And whatever we need to do to manipulate your society and ultimately steal your stuff, we have a justification. It had nothing to do with helping gay people or anything else. Like I said, most people are like me. You got nothing against gay people. Live their lives, do what they want. Do not discriminate against them. Let them do what they want to do. But the United States empire, as it does, and the ruling elite in Europe decided that they were going to use gay people as human shields for their imperial deeds to go around the world and steal stuff. And ultimately, the people who are going to suffer the most as a result of that are going to be gay people, because they're going to take a backlash. There's going to be a whiplash effect. It's already starting. And they're going to take the backlash and the whiplash because they were used as human shields. Now, let me continue. So what we're looking is, Since the Ukraine, when the Ukraine conflict showed their desperation, it was, I'm going after China, I'm going after Russia. Why? Ultimately, you already know this, three world powers, U.S., Russia, and the U.S. had what it considered its unipolar moment. We could argue whether it was from 1991 until, say, 2015, 16, 17, and that when China and Russia really started to grow, that was the dominant world power. And then they're like, nobody else can come up, can grow enough to be strong enough to challenge us, to even challenge our world domination. That's what it was about. And they were not very nice about it. They went around the world overthrowing country after country, stealing, rampaging, murdering, genociding, you name it. And so when the other world powers did start to grow, there's a lot of people around the world looking for an alternative. They were terrible with sanctions, economic sanctions, using the dollar as a sword to smite their enemies. These people were nuts, absolutely nuts. You know what? Give a person some power, and you can see what they're really like. You've heard the waitress rule, the waiter rule, where you go with someone, they go out to dinner with someone, and you watch how they treat the waiters, you watch how they treat the waitresses, you watch how they treat people who they have power over, and you can learn what they're really like. They may be really nice to you, and the waitress comes along, the waiter, oh, excuse me, I made a mistake. You jerk, you idiot, you're not getting, you know what I mean? How dare you? And they really light into people, anybody below them. You might have heard the old saying, kiss up, kick down. They're really nice to people if they say on their level or above them, and they try to beat the hell out of anybody and mistreat anybody below them. That tells you what they really are, what their transactions in life really are about, the dynamics of power. If they got power on you, they'll use it. If you got power on them, they'll try to kiss your butt and get you not to do to them what they do if they were in power. And the world found out after 1991 what a unipolar world with the U.S. and its cronies, vassals in Europe really would be like. And the world said, we don't like this, and we ain't going for it. We don't like it culturally. We don't like it economically. We don't like it kinetically because you're bombing us all the time. And so this is where we are now. And now, and might I add, here's the other thing about it, about Europe and its leaders. And I think this is important. This is my opinion. You may disagree. One of the reasons that Europe has these leaders is this, because the U.S. never allowed Europe to go its own direction. Because if you can go all the way back to after World War II, when the U.S. was interfering in European countries' governments because they didn't want any left-leaning governments or socialist or communist governments that would have been might have been voted in, but the people there had a right to vote in whoever they wanted, and the U.S. said, nope, we're going to interfere. Let's not forget, when Jeremy Corbyn looked like he was going to win, Mike Pompeo, under the Trump administration, said, well, if it looks like Corbyn's going to win, we're not going to wait around to act. In other words, no, you're England, you do not have a democracy, and you do not have a right to choose it. The United States will say, if you choose the person we want, Blair, Starmer, Bojo, whoever it is, that's fine. If not, we're going to step in. And let me add something. How did they go after Starmer? And this is important. This is important to understand Israel. I mean, not Starmer. How did they go after Jeremy Corbyn? Right? They used Israel. They used one of the U.S. imperial tools. People are like, Israel's a country that drags the United States around. I say Israel's not a country that drags the U.S. around. Israel's not even a country. In any more that my hand is another person. My hand is part of my body, and I use it to do things. Israel, as Joe Biden said, if Israel didn't exist, we'd have to create it. Well, they didn't have to create it because the Brits created it, but they took possession of it for the most part, not completely, right? They utilize it. It is a U.S. imperial intelligence and military outpost. The intelligence part of it is used internally and used in Britain and wherever they need to use the intelligence part of it. Of course, even the military part has fallen apart now, and the United States has to provide bombs, targeting. The United States provides everything for Israel. Why? Because Israel's the United States, and the United States is Israel, and it benefits them. If you believe that Israel is dragging the United States around, it's called plausible deniability. Trump, why'd you do this? Oh, Israel made me. Biden, why'd you do this? Israel made me. Obama, why'd you do this? Israel made me do that. You notice there's a pattern? The pattern is always, no, I wouldn't do it. I mean, come on, Israel, they're forcing me. I got no, And then you get mad at them, not for doing the deed. You get mad at them for being pushed around by Israel. Well, if my hand strangles somebody, put my hands around their throat, choke them to death. Garland, you choke that person to death. I have my hands. I don't have any control. And then what are you going to argue? Well, is it Garland or is his hands controlling him or does he control his hands? It's his hands. His hands are controlling him. They've got lobbying. They've got everything. His hands control him. He only does what they tell him to do. That wouldn't make sense, would it? And that's Israel. And so what happened? Remember, Starmer was a anti-Semite. They did all and we found out that AIPAC was intricately involved. What does that mean? That when Mike Pompeo said, we won't wait around to stop Corbyn, that what he meant was, we've got a variety of tools. We got the CIA, we got the Mossad, we got Israel, we got the Israeli lobby here, those are all the tools of the U.S. empire. Those are tools of the U.S. empire. Come on, think about it. It wasn't Israel acting independently. Israel and the United States are inextricably linked militarily, are inextricably linked in from an intelligence perspective, all of the above. This is all one. Israel's part of the United States, and the United States, using one of its many, many tools, Israel and the Israeli lobby and Israeli money and Israeli power. Israeli power in British is in the U.S. is U.S. power. And they used that to take Corbyn out because he wasn't allowed to be in there for numerous reasons. So what do? The reason you got these schlemazzles as rulers in Europe is because the U.S. empire and MI6 or what have you has made sure that those are the only kind of people that can come to power. So they can always maintain the illusion of a democracy. These are oligarchies. These are feudal oligarchies that maintain the illusion of democracy. That's what we're looking at. And what do you have with oligarchies? What do you have with feudalism? A bunch of inbred idiots. And how smart was Bojo? How about Liz Truss? Oh boy, now there's an intellectual powerhouse there. Look at that. You got a bunch of inbred idiots. That's what you get. Kakistocracy is the term, where the stupidest, a kakistocracy is where the stupidest and most corrupt people in a society become the rulers. And that's what they got in Europe right now. And they are desperate. I mean, think about this. Starmer and these guys, right? They're like, okay, we're going to go after Russia. Okay, how are you going to do that? How's your troop situation looking? And the military comes out and says, we ain't got them. How about how you looking as far as war troop situation, war material? You know, this stupid thing. I hate what is it, that Galaxy AI or whatever the heck it is. Anyway, so my point is, they don't have the truth. They don't have the war material. They don't have, the planes and tanks and things like that, right? They don't have the political support. What are they going to do? What do you think would happen if France or said, well, we're sending a bunch of troops to Russia and they're going to fight Russians? Well, they ain't got that many troops, and everybody would know they're dead men. Everybody would know they are dead men. And everybody would also say, and we're going to be dragged into a war with Russia. It's going to be nuclear and we're all going to die. We're all dead men. The political wherewithal is not there in like a lot of these countries, and things would start to fall apart. The people would say, we're not going to Russia to die on the steps of Ukraine. I mean, we're not going to the Russian border to die on the steps of Ukraine. You got to be out of your mind. And things would start to fall apart if they tried to, because they don't have the political wherewithal to do it. The people are struggling to make ends meet, much less anything else, right? So there we are. But yet, what are these apes doing? They're pretending as though they can do it. Why? What are their options? Right now, they're going to hell. If things, I didn't even bring, I need to get back to this. If things weren't bad enough, the whole cultural thing has collapsed because Trump and his team came to power, and they don't like that stuff. A lot of the cultural stuff. I'll put the lights. In some ways, they don't like it. Then a bottom line is this, and if we're honest about it, the U.S. empire is going broke. It can't afford to float Europe anymore. It can't afford to float Europe anymore. Trump came in, and I tend to believe, I had heard rumors around D.C., believe this or not, believe it or not, there were rumors floating around D.C., and I know some insiders here prior to the election. And the rumors said, even if Kamala Harris wins, a decision has been made to get the hell out. I heard those rumors, but I didn't think much of them, right? But I know the people that we don't really see the people in power, right? I know that the people in power, that a Trump and a Biden and a Harris, that these people are really puppets for the real people in power. But there was the word on the street in DC, as far as the political street was, a decision was made. You guys might have heard it online. I think McCurris might have said it too, because it was floating around, that whoever won the election, U.S. was getting out. And I think now I tend to believe it, because they just can't afford it. The U.S. is broke as hell, and it can't afford to do the things but the problem is our ruling elite is so stupid. They're so feckless. They're so lost, and they're so desperate that even though they know that they can't afford to do the things that they could do before, they know that they've lost the war. And not only have they lost the European conflict, that would be bad enough, right? It would be bad to lose it, but it has become a terrible burden to them. They are mired in it. They need to get out, and they can't. See, it's one thing to lose a war. You just put up a white flag, or you just say, okay, hey, you know what? It's yours. Vietnam was easy. At some point, it was like, yeah, let's just say we got to go and leave. And they had lost, and they got the hell out at some point, everybody. But this is far worse, because they're mired in this, and they don't know how to get out. And they know they got to get out ASAP. They can't afford it from a perspective of financial. Look, we're paying all the bills. The United States is paying all the bills. They're paying the street sweepers. They're paying Zelensky's salary, which he doesn't need because he's stolen so much. They're paying everything, and they can't afford to do that. They're sending war material there, tanks and bombs and all, and we're running out because we got 2 huge wars going on, and we can't afford it. We're running out. So it's like, oh my God, the important one is Israel. It's in the Middle East, so they think. But we still got to feed this one, and we can't. They want to get the hell out, really. What do they want to do? They want to get out any way they can and either hand it to the Europeans, which they don't really want to do because they want to still control Europe, but they want to be able to make some kind of a economic deal with the Russians because they can't afford things anymore. Economics are important. They're broke. We're spending too much money. Oh, the only thing we can do is print money, which technically we can, but they're worried about the value of the dollar. They're worried about BRICS because now their economic policies of sanction everybody and trying to dominate everybody is starting to backfire, and BRICS is looking for a way out, and BRICS is growing like hell. So they're looking at it saying, man, we've got other issues. We got to focus on financial issues and economic issues before this thing falls apart. Number one. Number two, this is just a drain. We're just throwing crap in here and we can't get it out. The problem is, the term is the zealousness of the convert, right? They've converted the Ukrainians into this massive Russia-hating machine so much, and they've done such a good job of it that when they say to these people, hey, we want to get out, guess what? The converts are more zealous than the original people that tried to convert them. So when they're like, all right, guys, look, this ain't work for us no more. We got to go. And guess what happens? Ukrainians are like, oh, no, hell no. We must stand against the Russians. We must fight the Russians forever. They're evil. And the U.S. is like, guys, I know we told you that. Fair enough. We really did. And at the time, we really meant it. Yes, the Russians were evil. I mean, I don't want to, screw with you here. Like perhaps we were misleading you. Absolutely not. At the time we said the Russians were evil, they were evil. And you guys were goose stepping around and Sieg Island. And oh, man, that was great. Times were good. Remember the good old times when we were goose stepping all over Kiev? Outstanding. Had a great time. What we're trying to say is this, we got to move forward. And you killed a lot of Russians. You bombed them, drones, missiles, attack them. I'm telling you, The last couple years were really good, and we had a great time together, but perhaps maybe to go in a little different direction. Things are different, and perhaps maybe we need to sit down with the old Ruskies and work out a deal. The Ukrainians are like, no, you trained us well. You trained us to hate the Russians, and we hated the Russians. And now you've dragged us into a war with the Russians, and they beat the living hell out of us. And we've been hit in the head so many times that we're punch drunk, and we're not rational. Sorry, you're the ones that created a bunch of irrational goose steppers. You should have thought about that before you helped us sew the icons of the Third Reich all over our uniforms. Before you helped us put pictures of Bandera and name every street and every corner and every park in Kiev after the Banderites or the SS or something. You should have started that. You brainwashed us, and we really are brainwashed. And now that we're brainwashed, we'll even turn on you if we have to, because you taught us to be Russian-hating lunatics and goons. Sorry. Now you got an ape with a grenade. That's what you got to deal with. Apes with grenades. You created the apes and you gave them the grenades. And now guess what you got? It's called an ape with a grenade. If you create a bunch of apes and you give them grenades, I don't know how you reverse course on that one, dudes. And that's what we got with Ukraine. And meanwhile, what else did you do? It's the same thing in Europe. You got Starmer and all these other idiots wandering around. And yes, we must hate the Russians. Well, they were happy for that. They have always hated the Russians. Yes, we hate the Russians. The Russians are an inferior race. I mean, the racism. Let me tell you something. The ruling elite of Europe are some of the most racist bastards on earth. Oh my God. And I don't mean racism like somebody might say there's no such thing as race. Yeah, you can take that all apart. You know what I mean. They hate groups of people just because they're members of that group. That's what the ruling elite does the best. And usually you might find this kind of convenient. The groups of people that they hate just because they're members of that group always seem to have things that they want: natural resources, rubber, oil, gas, all kind of things like they want. It's almost like it's something they need to do to make a point, right? The ruling elite in Europe traditionally, when they that group over there, oh my God, they got gold, uranium, oil, gas. From the looks of them, I think they're inferior. I think they're intellectually inferior. They're psychologically inferior. They're culturally inferior. They're inferior in every way, so much so that we got to go take their stuff and keep it all, because, hey, you can't have these inferior people running around with all this gold and uranium, or in the instance of the Russians, they are the official black people, I guess, of the ruling elite of Europe. They got gas and all kinds of stuff. We got to take that. They're Slavs. That means they're inferior. It's a game. It ain't really about race. It ain't really about anything you're told it's about. It's not about culture. It's about a ruling elite that wants to steal people's stuff, and they need a reason to convince the working class to go over there and fight the working class over there so they can steal their stuff on behalf of the rich people, the ruling elite, because you ain't even going to get none anyway. You're going to get screwed as a working class person, right? So that's the game. And now, guess what? They've done a pretty good job of convincing a lot of the people in their culture. Russians are bad, but I think the people throughout Europe are like, yeah, but we're kind of getting screwed here. How are we going to fix this? That's the working people are starting to realize that materially, the day-to-day lifestyle that they have appreciated with things like baguettes and schnitzel is going down the tubes. And so they're getting pissed. But the ruling elite is like this. Look, here's what we got to do. We got to figure a way to attack the Russians or what have you. They know. They're starting to wake up and realize that the game is up. In fact, look, there are factions. They're starting to get factional fighting. That's a good sign, to be honest with you. Here, there's factional fighting. What is happening in England right now? It's good. You got Starmer and his group of clowns who, couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. And they're like, yes, we must fight the Russians. And people would be like, well, I'll tell you what, there, Starmer, here's a gun, go right to the border and fight. No, by we, I mean the working class must die. I don't mean me. I mean, yeah, I'm going to be back here, number 10 Downing Street, eating a delicious sauteed perch with asparagus and a side of figgy pudding, right? Yeah, I'll be sitting there having that for dinner while I send you poor ignorant bastards straight to the line and get mowed down by Russian artillery. That's what he means. when he says we must fight the Russians. By we, I mean the working class, and I'll here, and then when it's all over, I'll collect the money because I get rich no matter what. Right? And that ain't working. And also, what's happening with this factional is the military. They're like, you know, you're saying somebody has to go to the Russian border and be obliterated by Russian artillery, right? And Starmer's like, yeah, actually. And they're like, they looked at each other. Hey, guys, I think he means us. Hey, Keir Starmer, do you mean us? Shut up and do what you're told. You're cannon fodder, just like the Ukrainians. And at some point, I think the leadership in the UK military said, you know, guys, I don't know about you, but I ain't going to the Russian border and stand under artillery fire until I get ripped to shreds. That ain't no way to spend a Sunday. I'd rather eat here. I got ordered fish and chips. I want my fish and chips. I don't want to die. Let's see. Let me see. Fish and chips get torn to shreds by Russian artillery and FPV drone. Hey, Starmer, this ain't happening, dude. And so now they're going to now they're going to you know, the papers, and they're like, hey guys, yeah, this is some bullshit right here. You know what I mean? I mean, they're dressing it up a little bit in the newspapers. Yes, the people from the senior UK government officials have said that perhaps it's not so great an idea to go face the mighty Russian army when we don't have any bullets. But really, when they really came to their office, they're like, hey dude, what, man, this is bullshit, man. This is somebody's trying to get us killed. Okay, I'll dress it up a little bit, but thanks, guys. All right, see you later. Dress it up real light, but it's crazy trying to get us killed. I got you. And then they write down officials said, and then they write it in a way that, you know, makes sense to us. It doesn't sound like them some bitches trying to get us killed. But that's what it comes down to. And so now it's falling apart. It's falling apart. And I suspect, to be quite frank, that the ruling elite in Europe is in turmoil, and they will be in collapse, and there will be dramatic changes because these people are just, I mean, they're absurd. The ruling elite is absurd. Macron, first of all, they're all about democracy, right? Except for not really, because all of these people have like 10, 15, 20%. None of them have 20% approval ratings. And every one of them, their approval ratings is on the way down. They're terrible. Trump just got in. He's only been in 4 weeks. And now Trump really, I mean, let's be honest, he's disgraced himself and everybody around him. He's disgraced himself. Came in, I'm going to be the peacemaker. I'm going to be this and that. I'm going to end these wars. And he's disgraced himself. He's caught up in the middle of a machine that he doesn't understand. And he doesn't understand how to drive the machine. And the machine's just continuing to do what it does. And the fact of the matter is, he wants an end. Look, here's what I'll say about Ukraine. It is clear as mud, right? It is very clear that Donald Trump wants to end that conflict. Now, we can argue about why. Maybe because he wants more war in the Middle East, maybe because he wants to somehow harass China and go to war with, I don't know what the hell. We could argue about why. My point is, it is obviously clear that Donald Trump wants out of Ukraine. It's also obviously clear that him and his people have no clue how to do it, because in order to do it, they got to do something that I don't know how you do this. The Russians have the initiative everywhere, and the Russians are going to get what they want through force of arms. How do you bargain with someone? I'll put it like this. You and I are playing a game of chess, and you got my king and queen both surrounded. Next move, the queen's gone. Next move, it's checkmate. And I sit there and I've got like, holy crap, 2 moves and I'm done, right? Hey, let's bargain. You don't need to bargain. You don't need a deal. A couple more moves. We've sat there, we both looked at the board, and we realized something. Couple more moves and you win. All right, let's make a deal. Yeah, he owns the deal. Let's say we played that game for $100, and I say, let's make a deal. Can we do 50? And you say, well, we can make a deal. You can give me the full 100. Yeah, but that would be 3 more moves. Why don't we make a deal now, and we'll get it down to 75? Will you take 75? And you don't need, and you're like, no, I'll take 100. Let me tell you why. Didn't we bet 100? Yeah. Don't I win in 3 moves? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, look. Let's stop talking and finish the game. We can talk and finish the game or not talk and finish the game. I mean, I want $100. I will get it either through finishing this game or you can hand it to me now since we already know the outcome and we don't have to finish the game. Give me my $100. That's where the Russians are. Hey, Russians, you think we can make a deal and you can take less than you planned on taking? And the Russians are like, well, no, we can make a deal, but you got to give me everything I want. Well, we don't want to do that. That's okay too, because we're going to take it. We don't need a deal. You need a deal. If you want us to make a deal early, you got to make it worth our while. You got to give us everything we need, or perhaps we won't take every single thing. Perhaps we'll let you slide on a little bit, but you got to sweeten it up with something else. You got to come forward with something else and say, how about if we don't do this, but we'll give you something else. We're willing to listen. We're all ears, bro. We're all ears, but you need a deal. You're caught in 2 wars that you can't get out of. You are leading a economy that doesn't work, and then it's going down the tubes. Meanwhile, Russia and China are both, their economies are booming and going through the roof. They got friends everywhere. BRICS is growing. The dollar is catching hell. And you're running out of war material, and all you are is a war machine. The United States is a big, gigantic war machine, and that's all really NATO is. It was a war machine. Think about this. NATO was a war machine pointed at Russia, right? And the problem is, if in fact at some point this thing ends and they get a deal with Russia, right now you don't need that war machine as in the same way that it is. You've got bigger priorities. Here's what I mean. One of the things that Trump would like to do is for the idiots in Europe to continue to try to build the war machine. So hopefully that they can go over and dominate the Middle East and Iran, get them out of the way. And then, even though we can't defeat the Houthis, we can somehow defeat Iran. And then off to China. Now that we've somehow defeated Iran, even though we went to war with Russia and lost. We went to war with the Houthis and lost. We're losing. What are we going to do? We're losing a war against the Houthis, a naval battle against guys that don't have a navy. Okay, so we lost to Russia. All right, we got bigger things to do. We'll go over here. Let's fight the Houthis. Darn, we're losing that war too. Okay, fair enough. Let's go after Iran. How do you think that's going to turn out? You can go after Iran. You can't defeat the Houthis. How's Iran going to turn out? Not good. If you go after Iran and you go to war with Iran, and then what happens? They wipe out all your bases. Maybe it goes nuclear. They wipe out everything. You know what I mean? Steve Witkoff made a point that made me think about something, because there's been some dispute as to whether or not the U.S. would use nukes. And Steve Witkoff made a point, and he is an economic man, and a lot of economic people know this, right? Witkoff said, he says, if one tactical nuke went off, just one tactical nuke went off, right? He said, stock markets all over the world would crash and collapse. They'd implode. And he's right. He's right. Right? And that's what they know. So would they use nukes against Iran? It is my opinion that most likely not. But here's the thing. It wouldn't matter, because there would be economic nukes. They closed Iran would close the Straits of Hormuz. Will hit whatever that would probably be their first move. And if the U.S. hit them, they probably knock the hell out of U.S. bases. And bottom line is this: at that point, it's economic collapse for the U.S. anyway. Trump's, if they go to war with Iran, it's the end of Trump's administration. It's the end of it. But would he maybe still be around here? Sure, but come on. What is your economic plan after that? Oh, what do we have? Well, we can't really get much in the way of gas or diesel fuel, and what we get costs $17 to $22 a gallon. In other words, you're going to go into hyperinflation. You're going into dire poverty, which means your country will then fall into political instability and probably some form of civil war, because people are going to be so furious at the government. Then you got civil war, right? Total instability. Your country's wrecked. That ain't going to, trust me, whatever plan Donald Trump had at that point, they're all gone. Gone. So bottom line is this. What I'm getting at is that we're really looking at a situation where the leadership in the West, and that includes the United States, that includes the traditional, what we call the collective West, Australia, they're gearing up to be Ukraine. Oh, please, please throw us at China so we can, our number one trading partner, so we can go into dire and absolute and abject poverty too. Please, right? At a time, might I add, the Europeans, they're like, oh, please let us fight Russia, even though we don't have, I mean, the European leadership, even though we don't have anything to fight with them and we can't even really do it, please let us pretend to do it. And we'll go in there and we'll send a couple, 10, 20,000 soldiers in, and they'll be mowed down and killed. And then we can say to the US, they killed all of our soldiers. Quick, come in and save us. Right? You got the Europeans doing that. You got Trump, don't know what the hell to do. One day he's like, yes, I'm going to be the peacemaker. I'm going to get a deal with Ukraine. Oh, wait a minute. We're going to go to war with the Houthis. Iran, you better do what I tell you, or we're going to go to war. We're going to make tariffs against everybody. Mexico, China, Europe, everybody gets tariffs. Yes, sirree. Oh, wait a minute. We got all these federal employees, got to fire them all. Department of Agriculture, Department of, I don't even know what the hell these people, what do they do? They work in state parks. Screw them in state parks. Fire them all, right? It's complete chaos. It's mayhem. It is, as Marx Laboda said, it's a chaos bomb going off all over the place. And that's where we are. And we got some people cheering for it. Yay, he's firing employees. Boo, he's doing this. Yay, he's doing that. It is the wheels coming off the cart in the West. And because we don't live in democracies, because we do live in oligarchies that only have the illusion of democracies, that when they get desperate like this, and when they see financial collapse on the horizon, they can't afford the illusion of democracy anymore. They ain't even going with that much anymore. That's pretty much over. And they just give you a lie, and then they get in office, and off the empire goes to do what it does. I think the US and Europe, particularly first, we're going to follow behind Europe, but Europe is going to fall into very, very serious economic and political and mayhem, instability. People are going to be hungry. Europe is getting very unstable, and at some point there's going to be violence. People are going to flip out when they realize that they're heading for dire and abject poverty. Places go, it'll be, I'll put it like this. So there are people saying, yes, that'll be a place that Europe is where you'll go for tourism. Who the hell's going to go to Europe for tourism when there's nothing but like violence and mayhem all over the place? That ain't no way. Oh, yeah, right. Go to tourism. What's going to happen there? Well, if you got a gold chain on, they're going to pound you over the head and take not the kind of place I really want to go for tourism. It's becoming unstable. And there we are. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Let me look and see. Interestingly enough, no super chats. Well, that's okay. Oh, wait a minute. We've got, yes. Janice Anderson says, can we use hoarders instead of ruling elite? Good point. Elite is too positive a word. Usually refers to working hard to reach the pinnacle, an achievement. Yeah, we can use, I use ruling elite because it's a more traditional term, but you're right, Janice. You need something that's more of a pejorative term, like low-life scumbags. That's why I use the analogy of monkeys with a razor blade, with a straight razor, or apes with a grenade, which is an insult to monkeys and apes, right? But to show that these people are it's not a rational class. There's no place for rational thoughts or behaviors now. And now it's it is a really fascist group. All right. Thanks a lot, Janice Anderson. All right. We got anybody else that has something to say? You got something to say? And maybe just perhaps, I think my mic is better, guys, don't you? I actually went from that stupid Yeti, which is so great, which is such great sound, to this. Look at this. This is called a Razer mini mic. This thing's like $50. The Razer mini mic's like, that mic is like $50, and really amazingly, it has a great sound. Let me look on Rockfin. Maybe we got a question there. Hey, Garland, you're sounding great. Basically, they treat us like children forever. Exactly. Trump will short the market, then nuke Iran. Okay. Let's see what else we got. Let's take a look and see if we got any Rumble rants. Do we have any? Yes, we do. Marduk Gko, whatever that means, says Marduk GKOB. Thanks a lot, Big M. Rumble Rant says many charities, maybe even most, are scams. That's a fact. You are correct. How can we find legitimate, effective charities that support the Palestinians? If you don't know yourself, please ask next time you talk to him. Well, I do know Laith Marouf has his freepalestine.video. So if somebody wanted to give, that freepalestine.video is where Laith is, and we all know him because we have him on every week. So that's an option. Let's see. Well, Garland predicted things will get froggy in France. Keep you by distraction by war so they can steal your wealth, by taking away your United States Social Security money. Well, that would be one way to usher in the Great Reset that a faction definitely seems to want. All right, thanks a lot. Somebody says, how about this? Garland, use a paper clip and some string, wire it into a phone connector into your sound card, much cheaper. Oh, but you know what? That's brilliant. I never thought about that. That is absolutely brilliant. Let's see what we got here. This person says Trump approved 8,200 Intel spyware on U.S. phones via FBI and cash, is bragging about using it, fighting the deep state. Yeah, that fighting the deep state. Let me show you something. Let me show you. Let me see if this is on the gray zone. I don't see it. I thought it was on the gray zone. I forgot where it is. Bottom line. Oh, no. I know where it is. It is it Covert Action Magazine? Maybe a Kit Clarenberg? Maybe that ain't it. Anyway, one of the things that has come out recently is that Google bought this company. And it's an Israeli. There we go. Let's take a look at it. This is going to find interesting. There we go. The gray zone. Here's something you'll find interesting. Since you brought that up, I'll share that with you before I go. Google imports ex-Israeli spies who automated Gaza genocide, right? On March 18th, Google bought Israeli cybersecurity company Wiz for $32 billion. The acquisition will mark the single largest transfer of former Israeli spies into an American company. This is because Wiz is run and staffed by a dozen of ex-Unit 8200 members, the specialist cyber spying arm of the IDF. The identity of the Wiz founders, all former 8200, is fairly well documented by Israeli media. One of the founders boasted on his link profile that he led a mission-critical R&D team for Unit 8200, which won them the Israel Defense Award 2012. Less documented, however, is the fact that a huge chunk of the Wiz workforce, from office managers to software engineers to product analysts, are also former Unit 8200 members, right? There we go. It's also worth noting that the Wiz deal represents a huge tax coup for Israel. It'll bring around $5 billion in revenue for the war economy. There we go. And for those of you who don't know that, 8200 sounds, however it sounds, here's the deal. Unit 8200 is, to be quite frank, I mean, it is effectively the NSA. Just think of the US NSA. That's what Unit 8200 is in Israel. It is effectively their version of the NSA, which means it is the NSA. It's their version of it because the US and Israel are all one entity. I say it all the time. They're inextricably linked. So now Google is bringing in effectively the Israeli NSA. I would imagine you might see that in some of the algorithms, because who owns YouTube? Ooh, right? And on YouTube. Now, another reason that's important is this, because if you've got, let's just say you've got your Chrome and your Gmail, and you save all your passwords and all that stuff, they can read your Gmail, who you're talking to, your passwords. Now, what do you have on your phone? Oh, wait a minute. You got Google Android, which means now they're in your phone, as if they weren't already in your phone, but now they're just going to be a little closer. So the bottom line is this. Any way you look at it, the so-called death of USAID, defunding of USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy, where people are like, oh yes, and I was one. I thought, oh, I guess they're not using the regime change thing, the regime change tools anymore. But even then, when I first said that, I'm like, but you know, the biggest regime change tool of all is Google. And if you don't deal with Google, you're not dealing with it. So what happens? You get rid of, oh, by the way, let me ask you this. USAID, what was their budget? $40 billion. How much did Google just pay for Wiz? $32 billion. You see what I'm saying? So the money that is going to be spent for USAID, the amount of money, they're still going to use the same amount of money for regime change operations. They're just putting it, they're just streamlining it. They're just, look, they're just saying, look, we used to do these color revolutions. They don't work well. These things don't work well anymore. They just ain't Voice of America, voice for, they ain't working. Let's stop putting money. Let's stop throwing bad money for good. That's all they're saying. Like, it's not, why are you defunding USAID? Because it doesn't work. Not because they don't want to do regime change anymore, but because the tools that they're using are no longer effective. That's it. All right. Thanks a lot, guys and girls. I'm out of here. I'm tired, but as you know, I'm not on Twitter. So if you would be so kind, share this on all your social media platforms. Make sure, let's, how many people we got? 644. All right. Make sure that you are able to what was I going to say? Oh, that you like, that you subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Also, make sure, I'm looking around, I got distracted. Make sure that if you can afford it, if you, well, first of all, follow me on Rockfin, follow me on Telegram, follow me on Rumble. And if you got Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. But if you can afford it, we got Patreon, and of course, buymeacoffees.com is great. You go there and just says buy Garland a coffee. How much? $5 per coffee. How many? However many you want. And right under there, there's a, you can think a clip on a thing that says make it monthly. So it's just like Patreon. We got Cash App, all that kind of stuff, PayPal. So if you can afford it, great. I appreciate it. If not, just share this on all your social media platforms. Do the best you can. Thank you very much. Make sure you smack that like button. I'm out.